is your first time, then welcome. Big shout out to everyone liking, commenting, subscribing, engaging on YouTube, and a huge, massive thank you to these awesome folks supporting over on Patreon who make it possible for me to continue sharing, exploring, and doing this kind of stuff. So these awesome people, thank you, thank you, thank you. Patreon members, of course, will be able to download this entire set at the end of today's video. And what is this set? What are we looking at? Well, you can hear what's going on in the background. You read the title on this video. Some sort of vector jungle stuff is what I want to look at today. So let's take a listen to the layers that are going on here today. I've got a chopped up drum break that's doing all this kind of crazy stuff here, and I've got a kick and a snare that's just kind of following that drum break. We're going to look at how to make it really track the randomness that's happening in the drum break. I've got some pads happening here that using some sort of really generative vector stuff. Well, we're going to get into that. And then I've just got a bass line happening here. So let's press stop on all of these things. Let's press stop on this. Let's press stop on this. Let's mute all of these things. And let's start from the start. So I've got 3 things prepared. If you're wanting to follow along exactly today, maybe prepare these 3 things yourself. Now I'm at 160 BPM. I've got a drum break. It sounds like this. And the only thing I've done to that is just gone through and quantized it and turned that into a new piece of audio. So it's like super on the grid. That's because we're going to cut that up for our jungle break. And I've got a kick drum and I've got a snare drum. And those are the 3 things that I've prepared today. So today, Vector Jungle. A little while ago, I made a video about vector effects and using vectors to sort of scroll between stuff. And then I found out that Ableton now has its own vector map. It's here, vector map. If you don't have it installed, perhaps you need to go here to packs, scroll down to available packs and search in the search bar here for vector map, and you'll find it there. So we're going to start with the pad sound, and we're going to look at what the vector map can do with that. So let's minimize all of these things. Not going to need them. As always, these first 2 channels is just me recording the main output and recording my voice, so we don't need to worry about that. Right. So let's start from the start. Let's start with a wavetable. Let's go instruments. Let's bring in a wavetable in here, drag it into a new channel. I'm going to use expressive chords to generate a chord sequence here. So we're going to go media effects. We're going to go expressive chords. I'm going to pick a preset, something like chill R&B. That sounds nice. It's It's a Wednesday morning. Chill R&B sounds nice. And I'm also going to bring in a scale device after this. This expressive chords device is not locked to any scale, but I want to be able to add a bass line to this that's also going to be generative. So I sort of need that to be in a scale for it to sound nice. Well, you don't need to do that. I'm just going to do that. You can decide to skip the scale part of this if you like. You're adults. You can make your own decision. Let's bring a scale in here. Let's go for something like D mixolydian. I think that's going to be nice in here. D mixolydian. We're switching it up a bit. Switching it out of the F Dorian that I've been going with a lot recently. Let's double click here. Let's make a MIDI clip. Let's make it 2 bars long there. And let's find some chords. So I've got the audition button turned on here. So just by pressing on this, I can hear some chords. Already, that's quite nice. Let's make it do something like that. And then this one up here. There we go. That's nice there. And one more chord here. Something like that. That will do. This is all really, really to taste. Really to taste. You can decide. Let's see if we can find another one for this last one. There we go. There's a bit more tension. Okay, so that's a chord progression we've got locked in there. Let's do something now. Let's look at what we can do with this vector effects, vector map. We're going to drag that into on this channel after the wavetable. There we go, after the wavetable. It does not affect the audio in any way. What does the vector map do? Let's actually press stop on that so I can talk a little bit without that happening in the background. So we can see a little ball just pinging around inside this square here. And this ball is giving us a vertical value. As you can see, the vertical value is not changing so much here. It's just going up and down a little bit. And we've got a left-right value here, which is changing quite a lot. When we open up the map settings here, we can map, this is index number 1, this is ball number 1. And we can map the vertical value to something, and we can map the up and down value to something. So let's just change a couple of things initially on this wavetable. I'm going to turn the sustain all the way up, and I'm going to bring that down. Actually, I'm just going to leave that like that. No, I don't need to do too much else. So let's map the left-right part of this, and we can, of course, change the modulation of the ball. We can choose which part of the ball is modulating stuff here. So let's use the left-right part of this to change the wavetable on oscillator 1. And then we can see that left-right action on here is altering that wavetable on oscillator 1. What does that sound like? Oof. So we can hear that really oscillating, but really moving between those two oscillators there. Let's turn on oscillator 2 as well. Let's change oscillator 2 to something like the harmonic series. Let's come over here and let's add in a second ball. Let's turn voices up to 2. And now let's take the left-right position of the second ball and map that to this wavetable position. This is really nice. Okay, let's add in a third ball. And let's use that third ball to control the filter frequency. So we've got the third ball left and right here. Let's map that to the filter frequency. Super nice. We've got a lot of movement happening in this sound already. We can adjust the amount that these are happening. If I bring the scale all the way down to 0, we can see that none of the balls are moving, and we can hear that none of those things are being modulated. We can turn the scale all the way up. Oh my goodness, that's going crazy. And we can see the balls shaking like a shaky thing. We can control all of that stuff within this vector map here. So the magnetism, this is how much the balls are being attracted to each other. There's an attractor in the center here. How much of the balls being attracted to the attractor. Let's turn the magnetism up, and this way the balls are going to sort of move towards each other as well, which is really nice. I really like it when it does this. We can move the attractor. We can, sort of move this all the way over here so that the balls are constantly being attracted to this side of the thing or over to this side of the thing. I'm just going to leave it in the center for now. Over in here, we've got a bunch more stuff as well. We've got ways in which we could spawn new balls. So I'm going to turn the emitter on. And I'm going to make it burst a new ball, and this is at the rate of quarter notes, and that ball lasts for a quarter note. So let's make it burst at eighth notes, but let's make it last longer. Let's make it last for something like... This is really nice. So we're getting this very rhythmic, but constantly evolving and moving thing over here. I'm just going to dial in a couple of these values. Full disclosure, what we're going to get to at the end of today is not going to sound exactly like it did at the start, because little amounts of these values and little amounts of change on the spawning and on all the attractor stuff here is really going to change the outcome. So it's really about dialing into your taste. I'm really trying to explore the concept here on this video, but let's dial these in a little bit. I think the filter frequency is doing a little bit too much. And if I adjust this center position here, this is actually going to adjust where the center of the filter is. Or we can change all of these to modulate instead of remote. So I'm going to set it all to modulate. So now the filter, we can see that filter moving around that center position. Let's turn down the amount. It's going down too low. This is really nice. We can turn these oscillators down to 50% because they're now functioning as modulators instead of remote controls. So they're down to 50%. Let's set both of these to be in the middle here as well. This one can come up into the middle. Super nice. Let's give a bit of unison. I like the noise unison. So the rhythm is coming from this spawning. So if I was to increase the rate of the spawning, we're going to get it's going to feel like a faster rhythm. If I turn this... Or I could turn the life down and have these change a lot more often. So these are two things that can really control the sort of way this sound feels. And we're going to explore this a little bit more on because we're going to use the same process on the break in a second, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, let's do some post-processing on this sound. I'm going to double-click. Well, no, I'm going to double-click on the wavetable, so I've got a bit more space. I'm not going to do anything else on that wavetable. Let's bring in a reverb, and let's use one of the other values on this. Potentially, let's use like the up-down on ball 1 to control some stuff with the reverb. So let's bring in a hybrid reverb. We're going to bring this in here. I've done this a bit on this channel. I'm going to set this up as sort of a pseudo send. So I'm going to turn the dry wet all the way up. I'm going to bring in a utility in front of it. I'm going to bring that utility down to here. And I'm going to select this to go to 50%. And it's now going to modulate the input. So we can see that that's now the up-down on ball number 1. I don't know which is ball number 1, but it's the up-down on ball number 1 is controlling the amount of send into this reverb. I'm going to drag my drum break into this reverb, use this drum break as the impulse response. So we're going to get a whole bunch of really nice kind of rhythmic stuff happening on that. And I'm just going to bring the decay down a bit because otherwise it's just going to continue decaying forever. Right, let's group these two things and let's turn that into a rack, and let's right click and create a dry chain as well. Super nice. Am I going to sidechain this against the original? Yes, I'm going to sidechain the reverb against the original. I think that will give it a bit more space. So let's bring in a compressor in here after the hybrid reverb. So this is only on the hybrid reverb channel. We're going to turn on external. We're going to click source is 10, the wavetable. And we want it to be audio effect rack chain. This is our dry and post effects. So this is now going to be ducking the reverb down behind the original. So we can see when the original signal disappears, the reverb duck jumps back up. Okay, cool. Let's add sort of an OTT in here. Sort of an OTT. Let's add an OTT in here. Multiband dynamics, OTT. But I'm actually going to bring this down to about 50%. Let's bring the highs down and turn the output up a bit. Yeah, this is giving it sort of a bit more consistent perceived volume level. And let's do something like that. Let's add an erosion at the end. So there's always a little bit of high end happening, even if it is just kind of a little kind of noisy, distortion-y thing. Let's bring an erosion in here. Wide noise. Let's bring the amount up. Let's actually connect that amount. Let's use this. This is super nice. A lovely, lovely, rhythmically evolving synth pad that's following some chords, but it's always continually evolving and doing stuff. Maybe this amount is just going a bit too much. Let's turn that down a little bit. Something like that. All right, let's leave that there for now. Let's press stop on that and let's explore this same thing with the drum break. So I've got my drum break here. Let's come back to it. Let's turn this channel on. Let's have a listen to it. It sounds like this. This is just from a sample pack. So the way I'm going to chop this up, I'm going to click on it, going to press right click, slice to new MIDI track, and I'm just going to create one slice per 16th note. I'm using the slicing preset classic loop. So when I press OK here, it gives me a new MIDI track with all of these slices chopped into 16 slices or 32 slices actually here. And it's got a bunch of stuff mapped here. You can see what's mapped. I'm not sure if that classic loop is a preset that I made or if that's inbuilt in Ableton, but you can see what I've got mapped here. I think this is built in Ableton because they're labeled VE attack and VE decay, and I would probably have not labeled them that. I'd probably just call it attack and decay. So I think that's an Ableton preset. So let's mute this one again here. Let's press play on this and let's have a listen. And we can hear that it's just playing through the break. When we double click on this, we can see the MIDI notes playing through the break. I'm going to make this just 1 bar long. And I'm going to do kind of a jungly thing here. So I want to select these three and I want to put these up. Let's bring that one back down here. Maybe these can go. Too many kicks in here. There we go. Maybe this one could be something else. There we go. Okay, this is really nice. I'm liking this. Let's randomize these notes a tiny little bit. So these notes being from C1 through to whatever this is, whatever 16 above C1 is. And the notes are playing these individual slices. So if I randomize the note, it's not going to randomize the pitch, it's going to randomize the slice instead. So let's go MIDI effects. Let's bring in a random in front of this. And I'm going to turn this down to choices 1, and I'm going to make it bipolar. So what this is going to do is every note, well, when the chance is activated, every note is either going to play the original note or the note 1 in front, so the slice 1 in front, or the slice 1 behind, so the slice that was just played. So if I turn this chance up to, say, 21%, so 21% of the time, it's playing either the same slice again or it's jumping ahead a slice. So we're getting all these little stuttering effects, which I really like. I'm going to come back into this clip and I'm actually going to I'm going to modulate this chance a little bit, or in fact automate the chance a little bit. So I'm coming into this clip. Let's actually duplicate. I want this to be 2 bars long. So let's duplicate that section to be 2 bars long. Let's go to envelopes here, random and chance. And just at the start, just on this first note, like the first note of the 2 bar sequence, I'm going to turn the chance all the way down. So it's always going to hit the kick drum on this slice here. Cool, we've got a really nice pattern happening now. Let's see what we can do with the vector map on this. So let's go back here to audio effects. Let's bring in the vector map and let's drag it in here. So we're basically going to use the same process, but here we're going to control a bunch of stuff like perhaps I'm going to bring the sustain all the way down actually. So we're going to perhaps control the decay here. This is going to be super nice. And then I think perhaps also the loop length of this stuff is going to do something nice. And then also, yeah, also the transpose. I think I'm going to leave everything else. So it's going to be decay. Sustain is going to stay where it is. So we're going to do decay, loop length, sample length, and then also transpose. So let's maybe bring, let's bring three voices in again here. Let's open up the mappings and let's map some of this stuff. So let's go left, right on ball 1. You can control the decay here. Again, let's switch this to modulate and let's make this go like this. And let's turn the amount of that down. So this is way too short. This is getting way too short. I'm going to dial this in a little bit more here. It's not doing too much movement here. Let's make it do a bit more movement. So let's increase the scale here. And you can see that every time I click in here, we're respawning these balls. Let's turn this back to 1 so we can look at that ball. It's not doing much. Let's spawn it again. There we go. Yeah, so now it's still going down a little bit too much, I think. So let's actually turn this up a bit more over here. Let's turn the scale up. Let's turn the scale back to here, actually. And now it's spawned. Yeah, so sometimes we're getting super short and sometimes we're getting some nice long stuff happening. This'll do for now. Okay, let's bring in a second voice. And let's map this to perhaps the sample loop length. Let's bring that down to 50%. Let's turn this down to 50% as well. And let's bring in another voice. And let's map that one to the sample length here. And now we're getting some sort of car plus strong stuff happening there. Let's turn down the amount of that modulation. This is kind of interesting. I think maybe something more like that. And now let's add perhaps one of these things. We've got a bunch here. Let's add one of these to the transpose. Oh, it's going down way too low. Let's turn the offset up on that and turn the amount down. Maybe I don't want the offset all the way up on that. Here we go. We're in some nice pockets here. Let's just respawn and check a bit more and dial these things in a bit more. Yeah, we're getting a whole bunch of really interesting variation stuff happening here. So we could, of course, leave this like this. This is already quite an interesting, evolving, slowly changing thing. But again, I like this rhythmic spawning situation that was happening on the pad. So let's open up this spawn stuff here. And let's turn on the emitter. And let's make it spawn, I think every quarter note. And let's make them last a lot longer. So every quarter note, we're getting quite a drastic change in the sound. But then things are morphing and evolving. Let's go back to these attractors. Let's turn on the magnetism. That they sort of move towards each other. We're getting all this really interesting interaction stuff happening. Let's turn up the attractor strength so that this is quite nice that they're constantly heading towards this center point. Yeah, this is really nice. Okay, what else can we do here? Is there something else we want to do here? We can randomize the mass of each ball. So this is going to randomize. Well, when I turn it up, you can see that some of the balls are bigger and some of the balls are a bit smaller. So this affects how much they're being drawn towards the center. The center is functioning kind of like a gravitational thing, and the balls themselves are also functioning kind of like gravitational things. So a random amount of that is randomizing the amount that they're being drawn to the center and drawn to each other. This is super nice. Again, you can go wild with this stuff. You can completely go in and move where the spawn thing is set to. You can change the attractors. It's all going to get slightly different results, and that's the fun part. Finding out what you like and doing some stuff with that. Oh, yeah, that's really nice. Okay, cool. Let's do a bit of processing on this. Let's add perhaps, again, let's use an OTT to sort of really bring out a lot of these transients and a lot of the perceived dynamics. OTT, bring you in here. Let's turn the output up. Let's turn the amount down. Yeah, this is some nice stuff happening. Let's bring in a raw after this. Let's saturate it a bit. Use the compressor on the raw and give it a bunch of drive. Let's turn this to single. Oh my goodness, this is fun. Okay, so now I want to create a situation where I'm taking all of the kicks and the snares out of this. I'm able to extract the kicks and the snares, or perhaps just the first kick and all of the snares out of this chaotic drum loop and use that to trigger this kick and this snare here. So how are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to create a new MIDI track. Shift-Command-T, because remember, we're randomizing the pattern here, so it's not going to be the same pattern every time. So if I was to just program in a pattern here, it's not going to stay synced. We want it to stay synced, or I want it to stay synced. So let's make it... This is going kind of crazy. I'm going to leave it running in the background. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to come to the vector map, and I'm going to turn the scale all the way down so we can just hear the loop a little bit doing what it's doing. Right. On this new MIDI channel, let's bring in an instrument. Let's bring in a drum rack. Drum rack, where have you gone? Drum rack. I'm going to jack my kick into C1. And I'm going to drag the snare into D1. So, well, if I mute that, we've just got a kick here, and we've got a snare here. Super nice. Let's bring this back on. So I want this snare to trigger every time a snare is being triggered by this beat over here. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select MIDI, and I'm going to select the MIDI from that channel. And I'm going to turn the input monitor on. And we're sometimes getting this. Sometimes we can see the MIDI being triggered all the way over here. But it's not getting all of the snares, and it's only getting this first kick. So how I'm going to make it select all of the snares, I'm going to do that using pitch effects. So MIDI effects, I'm going to bring in a pitch device in here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to group it. Command-G, turn it into a group. And we're going to use the key select here. So, I know that in here, snare is being triggered by this slice here, slice 5, which is... Oh, we'll come back to the notes. And let's actually turn it off. So I can find the snares by... I've got the select monitor on here, and let's turn the random off for now so we can actually do this. So when I come back here, slice 1, that's a kick, random bongo, that's a snare. I want that snare. And then I probably want this snare as well here. So I want this slice and this slice. So this slice, I can go C1, C sharp 1, D1, D sharp 1. This is E1. So let's come back to this drum rack over here. Let's press play again. Let's come back to this drum rack over here. And I'm going to say, I want this pitch device to only trigger on E1. And I want the same thing for that other snare, which was sort of eight slices along. So I'm going to duplicate that. And I'm going to move this. I'm going to move it along. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm just pressing right on my keyboard to do that. Now, I want to move this pitch device outside of this rack. I don't need those in there anymore. Let's drag that outside of this rack. I can delete this pitch device here. Now I want this pitch device to constrain everything that's coming in into the one note. And I want that note to be this note here. I want that note to be D1. So I'm going to say everything that comes in, I want you to be D1, which is 38. I can type in 38. Range 0, and I want you to fold. So now we can see and hear that snare being triggered every time a snare is being triggered, every time either E1 here or whatever this other one, I can't be bothered counting right now, is being triggered. So now we can turn the random device back on here. And we can hear that the snare on our drum rack is following the snare on this break. Right, I now need to come back to the drum rack and make another chain just for the kick. So I want to collect this and this into one group. Shift-G. And now let's create a new chain here, create chain. And this chain is just going to be C1, and that's going to be our kick. And that's just going to only let C1 through. And when we look here, we can see C1 is triggering the kick, and all of those other snares are triggering the snare. This is really nice. Okay, let's come back to the kick. Let's do a little something on that, actually. I'm just going to turn it up. -6. There we go. And sometimes it's triggering the double, which is really nice. Let's add a bit of fade out. There's a little bit of a clicky thing happening there. Let's come back to this drum rack as well. Let's turn up the release a tiny little bit. Too many clicks. Sustain well. Yeah, this is nicer. What happens if we had just a tiny bit of attack? No, I think let's leave it like this. Okay, let's sidechain this break against our sort of drum rack kick and snare. So let's come here, let's bring in an audio effects. Let's bring in a compressor. Gonna drag you in here. Gonna select external, gonna select source, number 11 drum rack. And now we can hear that break ducking down behind. A little bit less on the release. A little bit more on the ratio. This is nice. Let's actually maybe put that before the raw. Yeah, so the raw can just drive it a little bit more. Cool. Let's come back to the drum rack. I just want to do one tiny thing to the snare. I've been doing this a little bit recently. Let's solo it. Adding a grain delay on top of a snare to create some kind of like tonal thing. So let's bring a grain delay in here. We're going to turn this to sync off. We're going to turn the time all the way down. We're going to add a bit of feedback, and we're going to add a bunch of pitch to it. This is fun. Let's add some spray. Bring the frequency down. Yeah, let's bring the time down a bit more. Turn the spray down, actually. Bit more feedback. Yeah. Now dry wet, bring that down. Yeah. This is just giving the snare a kind of interesting character. Okay, let's bring that back. Let's bring the pad back. Let's actually sidechain the pad to the drum rack as well. So let's come here. I can just click on this compressor. Option, click and drag it over to the wavetable here. Super nice. Let's group these two bits of drums together. Let's add a drum bus onto this group. Audio effects drum bus. Add a bit of boom to it. I think we turn this wavetable up again now. Okay, I want to make the wavetable do one more thing. I want to make it sort of do a little bit more of a sort of thing at the end of each of these chords. So I'm going to create a utility. I'm not going to create. I'm going to drag a utility in here, and I'm going to drag an LFO in after that utility. I'm going to select this to be ramp up, but I'm going to select this to be unipolar. I'm going to make it go minus 50%. And now I'm going to map that to the gain here. And we can see and we can hear this LFO is now controlling this. Let's set this to be on the grid. Let's maybe make it do an 8th note thing. Something like this. Yeah, now I want to control the depth. So it's kind of doing this with each new chord. So let's do that with an envelope MIDI. Let's bring an envelope MIDI in. Where have you gone? MIDI effects. Envelope MIDI. I'm going to drag that in. And I want that to be before the expressive chords. So we can see that each time a new chord is being triggered, this envelope MIDI is being triggered. Right, we're going to make it do something like this. Release down. And we're going to make this go unipolar and 100%. And I'm going to drag that onto the depth here. And now let's double click this and let's dial the time in a bit. So the attack. And let's give it a bit more curve. This is really nice. And I'm actually going to put this effect before the OTT. Yeah, super nice. Okay, cool. Let's do the bass line. Let's bring that up onto the same scene here, but let's press stop on both of these so I can just talk and concentrate a little bit. Let's do the bass line with an operator. We're going to do some kind of FME things. Let's go audio effects. No, let's go instruments. Let's go instruments, operator, drag a new operator in here. And let's sequence the bass line using an SQ sequencer. So let's go MIDI effects. Let's go SQ sequencer. And this is where it becomes really handy that I used a scale device. I'm going to bring a scale in after. What did we do? We did D mixolydian, I think. So let's go to D and D mixolydian like this. I'm going to turn the octave down, maybe 2 octaves down. Yeah, let's make this all the way down across here. Cool, let's make it 16 steps. These also need to be, oh, actually, maybe I like that being up, actually. So that we get, then the second half, we're going to get some weird stuff happening. Let's randomize the pitches. Yeah, this is actually really nice. Let's randomize the steps. Yeah, cool. Double click on this, and now I'm going to use the velocity information to control this FMing. So let's do that using a expression control. Bring an expression control in here. So I want the expression control after the SQ sequencer. Let's randomize the velocities, and let's map that velocity amount to the FM here. Let's maybe give it, put the FM an octave up, or and one harmonic up. Let's make it. Yeah, this is actually quite nice. Maybe give it. It's getting a bit crunchy here. Yeah, maybe something like this. Maybe it's doing a bit too much. Let's bring this amount down. There we go. Yeah, actually maybe this can come up just tiny bit more. A tiny bit down on this. What happens if this is bipolar? Yeah, this is actually really nice. So we can create totally new sequences just by randomizing the pitch here, randomizing the steps, or randomizing the velocities. All of these are going to give us super nice, super different results. Let's change this to be a unison, actually. Sorry, not unison, mono. Yeah, maybe let's bring the release down a little bit. Cool, let's do some post-processing on this. Let's saturate it a little bit, audio effects. I'm going to use a raw. Let's bring a raw in here. Again, let's compress it a bit using raw's compression. Let's drive it a bit. This sequence is a bit too normal for me. Let's give a bit more random. Yeah, super nice. Let's maybe actually turn this on. There we go. How's this sound? Let's bring the drums back in. Yeah, super nice. And the pads. Cool. I think we can maybe add. Let's just change this to single mode. Compression down a little bit. Super nice. Let's also sidechain that. Let's come back to this. This wavetable has the sidechain against the drums. Let's click on that sidechain. Option, click and drag it onto the bass. Super nice. So now we've got all these kind of different things we can really modulate quite easily. If we come back to this break here with the vector stuff happening, where's the vector gone? Vector map here. Let's bring our scale back in. It's going crazy with these. Oh, this is super nice. So simply by changing these amounts by tiny little bits, bring the magnetism down a little bit, bring the random mass down, turn the mass itself down a little bit, changing the burst rate. And we could do the same thing on the wavetable pad here. Of course, we can come back to the where's it got in here? Is it in here? No. The vector map here. We can turn the scale all the way down on here. And it becomes a lot more consistent. Turn the scale all the way up. We get a bit more chaos. Let's come back to this operator. I think I want these to be down one octave. Yeah, this is much nicer. There we go. Some vector jungle. That's the rack. Patreon members can download this entire set, including the dialing in that I did on the version that you heard at the start. Lovely to have you here today. I'll see you next time.